My father passed away, leaving behind some belongings that I thought of sharing with my husband. However, the response I received from him left me in disbelief. Despite being married, my husband declared that the money I inherited from my father wasn't mine but his. I'm a 32-year-old female, and my relationship with Benjamin began during my third year of college. My first boyfriend, Charles, was financially irresponsible, spending recklessly on alcohol even though he still received an allowance from his parents. After enduring 6 months of frustration with Charles, I ended the relationship. The contrast was stark when I met Benjamin, an accountant with a calculated and intelligent demeanor. Although he did the bare minimum in terms of taking me out and buying gifts during our college days, I appreciated the attention. Benjamin and I started dating right after college, and our relationship progressed quickly. He was good-looking, charismatic, and I considered myself fortunate to have him. Despite his minimal efforts in the early days, I didn't mind as long as I felt valued. Our marriage happened when I was 26, and we were in a long-distance relationship at the time. Benjamin proposed after returning from a visit with his family in Colorado, expressing that he couldn't see himself with anyone else. Excitement overwhelmed me, but my mother, for some inexplicable reason, had never approved of Benjamin. Despite my dad liking him, my mother warned me against marrying him, expressing a bad feeling about the union. Disregarding her concerns, I proceeded with the marriage. Initially, our marriage was fine. I was working as a secretary, but a workplace disagreement led me to quit. Benjamin, who provided for our essentials, supported my decision. However, things took a turn when I asked for money to buy a dress, and he dismissed my request, claiming I had enough clothes. As the frustration grew after repeated rejections, I turned to my parents for advice. While my dad suggested understanding, my mom was visibly upset. She decided to call Benjamin, and that marked the onset of the first serious argument we had at home. Benjamin accused me of being selfish, claiming that I'd only thought about money. I defended myself, questioning what was wrong with wanting a few things for myself. The heated exchange led us to sleep in separate rooms. Frustrated, I resolved to start working again and began searching for job listings the next day. Unfortunately, I couldn't secure anything decent. The only job that seemed worthwhile was not close by, and despite attending a few interviews, I received no calls. Accepting my fate, I began to feel like a student again as my parents started sending me money. For a while, I managed to be content, pushing away the pain of knowing that my husband wouldn't provide for me. I took care of bills whenever possible, trying to contribute to the household. However, when my dad fell ill, I felt guilty taking money from my parents, so my allowance was halted. This was about 8 months ago. I refrained from asking Benjamin for money, visiting my parents whenever I could. My dad's health deteriorated, and my mom struggled with managing both his care and the bills. I suggested staying over since I was unemployed, but Benjamin objected, fearing it would cause problems in our marriage. In desperation, I found the solution through a friend, Julie. 4 months ago, I lent her some money from my father, and she started a multi-purpose business. Handling the finances, I also received a reasonable portion of the monthly earnings, contributing to my dad's treatment. Whether Benjamin knows about this, I'm uncertain as I didn't inform him. At this point, all I want is for my dad to recover. In an update, I shared the difficulty of overcoming my father's recent death. He passed away over 3 weeks ago, and I was devastated. My mom came to stay with me, and even Benjamin, whom I thought had become emotionless, showed sympathy and care. He comforted my mom, often going above and beyond to get whatever we needed. This sparked a renewed faith in my marriage, suggesting that perhaps Benjamin had reasons for his previous behavior. As unbelievable as it may sound, my mom moved out a week ago. Later on, I accompanied my mom, and my dad's lawyer visited. That's when I learned about the thousands of dollars my dad had kept for me. Apparently, he had set aside the money after hearing my complaints about my husband, wanting to ensure I had a comfortable life. Mom received a substantial share as well. Before leaving my house, my mom advised me to keep this information from Benjamin. It puzzled me because I thought she was starting to like him, but I suppose I'll never truly understand. Considering expanding my business with Julie, I discussed the idea with her when I got home. She was enthusiastic, but suggested waiting a while since the complex was relatively new. Another notable event was my husband asking me out on a date upon returning home. Initially, I thought he was joking, as Benjamin rarely engaged in humor, especially since we got married. It turned out to be a pleasant change, and we enjoyed our dinner. Post-dinner talks centered around how my mom and I were coping. Benjamin inquired about my mom's well-being, and I assured him that my dad had taken care to ensure her comfort before his passing. That's when he found out about the money my dad had left me in his will. While I didn't disclose the amount, I saw no reason to hide the fact that my father had left me an inheritance. I spoke to my mom yesterday and shared details about my date with Benjamin. She was shocked, not surprising given the circumstances. She reasoned that his extra care was due to my dad's passing. However, when I mentioned that Benjamin knew about the money left for me, she expressed suspicion. She insisted that Benjamin was after the money my dad left and accused me of being naive. We ended up in a heated argument, with her claiming that Benjamin loved his money more than me. I defended my husband, attributing her dislike for him to her unfounded suspicions. After the phone call, I was in such a bad mood that even Benjamin noticed. When I told him about the argument, he laughed it off, stating that I would never take the money given to me. Before I could exhale in relief, he dropped a bombshell, saying that everything I had was his since we were married. He gave me a casual kiss on the cheek and fell asleep, leaving me restless and confused. Now, he wants to discuss the money, jokingly offering free advice on how not to spend it all. As my husband left the house, promising to see me in the evening, the dread I felt from the previous night intensified. I began to realize that my mom might have been onto something, and I should have heeded her advice to keep my mouth shut. The notion that his is mine because we're married was nothing but nonsense. While I acknowledge my mistake in sharing everything with Benjamin, it's a blunder I won't repeat. Update number 2. My dad left money behind, and it turns out Benjamin was truly after it. How did everyone else see this but me? Even Julie figured it out when I confided in her 2 weeks ago. Unable to discuss it with my mom due to strained relations, I didn't want to admit she was right about Benjamin. It wasn't an ego thing. I just didn't want to hear her suggest divorce again. Julie, a single mother, sympathized but had no clear advice. Eventually, I mustered the courage to discuss my fears with Benjamin, hoping for understanding. Unfortunately, it only led to a heated argument. I explained that the money left by my father was mine to use as I saw fit. But Benjamin asserted that, as a married couple, everything should be shared. When I pressed him on what he had shared between us, he argued that he covered all household expenses without consulting me. I countered that it was his responsibility, and he could have communicated if he needed money. In his eyes, I became the villain, and he ominously warned me of regret. The situation worsened as Benjamin stopped eating at home, dismissing my cooking, and presented me with bills to pay. When I resisted, he threatened not to take responsibility for the consequences. I refused to sleep with him, and 3 days ago, our power was cut off. Benjamin was absent, leaving me bewildered. Desperate, I called him, offering to contribute to the bills. He returned the next morning, and I handed him the money, having stayed with my mom. I confided in Julie, shocked at Benjamin's pettiness. Julie advised me to give him whatever he wanted for the sake of peace in the household. There was a clause, though, leaving me wondering if she subtly suggested filing for divorce. Yesterday, when I asked Benjamin for money for groceries, he refused, claiming I had the means to go to the supermarket. Another fight ensued on the spot. I confronted Benjamin, telling him he was being unreasonable and petty. In response, he accused me of selfishness, claiming I couldn't see what he had done for me all this time. After a moment of silence, I devised a plan. I informed Benjamin that I would act irresponsibly and selfishly, as he alleged I was, until he ceased his behavior. The next morning, Benjamin questioned why I hadn't ironed his work shirts. I replied that they weren't mine, and he had hands to do it himself. He laughed, called me wicked, and decided to go to the laundromat. My heart broke as he left the house. Eventually, I sought solace in my mother, sharing everything with her. As I suspected, she concluded that my marriage was falling apart and suggested filing for divorce. I stayed with her, crying my eyes out. I recently spoke with Benjamin, informing him that I wasn't feeling well and needed to stay with my mother temporarily. In response, he threatened divorce, claiming no use for a selfish wife, demanding I return home ASAP. Despite the white lie, I wonder if my actions were wrong. With both Benjamin and my mom seemingly in agreement, is this truly the end of my marriage? I'm at a loss for what to do. Update number 3. I decided to file for divorce before heading home. When I showed Benjamin the divorce papers, he seemed shocked. He insisted that divorce was just a threat, and he didn't really want it. Despite my skepticism, he begged me not to proceed with the divorce. After much contemplation, I agreed to give our marriage another chance. However, I made it clear that we needed to talk and set some terms. After a few days, Benjamin finally agreed to a discussion. I told him to resume paying bills and eating at home, and I committed to taking care of the house. I also informed him that I wouldn't ask for money unless it was for groceries or mutual benefits. Despite my reservations, I was willing to make it work. Benjamin claimed he was fine with the agreement, and I moved back into our bedroom. Initially awkward, things eventually normalized. Suddenly, 2 weeks ago, Benjamin changed his stance. I woke up to find him staring at me. When I asked what was wrong, he claimed our earlier agreement wasn't reasonable. Curious, I asked if he meant work, and he revealed he was referring to the money. Benjamin finally disclosed that he was aware of my business, but refrained from mentioning it because I stopped bothering him with trivial requests. He emphasized that he couldn't be the sole contributor to bills now that I had a source of income and likely more money than he did. Surprisingly, it made sense to me. I had unknowingly adopted his habit of keeping money to myself. We agreed to split the bills 50-50, and things returned to normal. 3 days ago, Julie informed me about a workplace accident and a fire in the Eastern Complex. After calculating the costs, I realized I needed a significant sum of money to cover damages and hospital bills for injured employees. Julie, dealing with her own responsibilities, couldn't offer much help. Despite my initial decision to handle it alone, Benjamin confronted me after dinner, revealing he needed money to pay off a loan he had applied for years ago. Still reeling from the calculations, I told Benjamin it wasn't a good time. He insisted, talking about more money, but my focus was on the damages. I asked for time to think, retreated to lie down, and Benjamin followed me into the bedroom. When I explained the situation, he told me to forget about the complex and give him the money urgently. It seemed absurd, and I asked for time to consider. The next morning, Benjamin accused me of being selfish again. I pleaded for more time, but he claimed he had offered a solution I refused. I contemplated paying off his loan and covering damages, but that would hinder my plans to start something new. Julie suggested paying her back gradually, but Benjamin threatened divorce again. He disclosed taking out a loan to help his brother and revealed his own debt, stemming from funds borrowed to buy our current house. Shocked, I decided to prioritize Benjamin and help him, putting the business on hold. Update number 4. I'm now divorced. It took time, but I discovered Benjamin had lied about his brother's situation. On a whim, I called John, Benjamin's brother, offering help. Confused, John didn't even recognize the caller. It turned out that Benjamin had deceived me. When I inquired about the real situation, Benjamin confessed that he had lost his job early in the year and was relying on a loan that was almost depleted. With almost no income, he needed to repay the loan in a few months. It was disheartening to witness Benjamin speak, and for the first time, I saw a defeated look on his face. When I questioned why he hadn't trusted me enough to share the truth, he claimed it wasn't necessary for me to know the details. Concerned about our financial situation, I suggested downsizing to a smaller home, but Benjamin reacted angrily. He questioned why I found it difficult to give him money to cover his debt when he had taken care of me for so many years. I found his statement amusing because even in the early stages of our marriage, I had taken care of myself. I dressed and bought necessities, paying bills after my parents began sending me money monthly. Now, with a substantial sum to my name, I continued paying bills and looking after myself. I recounted all these financial moves to him, excluding details about the business. When Benjamin threatened divorce, I welcomed it, tired of the secrets, lies, and the pain of being in a marriage devoid of love. I packed my belongings and left the house, seeking refuge with my mother. I informed Julie that I would be taking a break for some time, and she understood. Benjamin offered no apology this time, making my decision to divorce him easier. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago. I am now focusing on self-care and ensuring the success of the business. While I don't know how Benjamin is faring, I do know he no longer lives in our former home, and I haven't seen or heard from him. It seems like the end of my relationship with my husband. It will take time, but I'm making an effort to leave the past behind. As we conclude this story, we learn that the narrator has reached a breaking point with Benjamin, deciding to cut ties and prioritize her own well-being. The audience is encouraged to share their thoughts on the story and any similar experiences in the comments section. The narrator's journey involves moving on from a toxic relationship and focusing on personal and professional growth.